Buenos días y bienvenidos a nuestra comunidad unitaria universalista de San Miguel de Allende. Thank you for joining us today. Gracias por acompañarnos hoy. In the knowledge of the space of the Chichimeca Otomi Purépechas, I want to welcome all to this sacred and cherished space. Sin importar creencias, amores, preferencias políticas, raza, género o trasfondo espiritual, en este espacio compartido en el espacio Chichimeca Otomi Purépechas, quiero darles la bienvenida. No matter what you believe, who you love, no matter your political references, race, gender, or spiritual background, we encourage you to bring all yourself and embrace the diversity that exists in the interconnectedness that bring us together. I'm Carla Espinosa, proud member of the Sunday Services Committee, and I'll be your service leader today. Welcome to all, and welcome to Zoom people. Thank you for joining us, whoever you are. After the service, those in Zoom are invited to stay connected and visit with others in the main room. Please stay for discussion and share some coffee, goodies, or whatever you're interested to share in this Wi-Fi space. And if you're visiting here, please type your name, how you heard from us, and in the chat box, and we can greet you later. The ones that are here, please, the visitors, or the first time if you're visiting, raise so we can see you and greet you later personally. Can you give us that opportunity? We'd love to see new members. We don't have members of first time. Oh, welcome. Yes, Ray. And everybody here in the Aldea, visitors, not first time, many times, we are also invited to have coffee and cookies after the service so we know each other better. And also, there is information of the Justice Foundation that will be lovely if you can visit it a little bit and see what we have to do these days. I want to remind you that in your order of services, we also have the activities like Thursday lunch and games, the Tom's Coffee hours, and the various activities that we like to do as a congregation. We do record our Sundays in-person services, and you can find them in the link and in the website, and there are many spaces where you can find them as well. I want to share with you also that if you have a joy or concern in your heart that you want to share, we know we have a new virtual space to do it, and it's an email that says joys and concerns at UUFSMA.org. So it's going to be easier for us to gather the joys and have them, and also help us to keep on top of things. Now I want to invite Marco Evangelista to give us a brief announcement about the endowment fund.
Thank you. It's actually more the endowment than the endowment alone. It's really how to leave a legacy to the UUFSMA. There was an article on the newsletter, but I printed some copies out for you. So especially if you're not going to be next week, if you're not going to be here, grab a copy on your way out. I also left it on the table of the Social Justice Foundation, and explains how to leave a legacy to UUFSMA, to the various, we have two endowments, one for the fellowship, one for the social justice. We have other programs like the Beloved Community Fund and so on. You can reach out to any of the members of the endowment committee. Raise your hand. Stan, Rosemary, and Janet right there if you have any questions. But we'll have a breakout session next week after the service in the room there in the back to discuss, if you have any questions about how to do that. We'll talk about the discount that notaries extend for the month of September if you want to change your will and so on. Okay, so grab a copy of this article get in contact with any of us. Have this light green tag, and if you can, come next week for the breakout session. Thank you.
Good morning. My opening words come from Alexis Engelbrecht Villafane. Welcome to this community of seekers, of questioners, and of those open to the revelation that comes from experiences with one another and the spirit of life. May we remember that while we have some answers, we don't have all the answers. And while we know some things, we don't know everything. And while we have lived, others have experiences very different from our own. Welcome to this community full of questions and possibilities. And so our welcoming hymn today is, we're going to make you work a little bit. It's a round. It's number 1023. If you actually want to look, it would be in the teal hymnal. You don't have those, but the words are on the screen. It's only one hymn, or one verse. It's very short. It actually is a contemporary English Quaker round, and it was created by the women who were protesting the nuclear missiles going to England back in the 1980s. And so it was created out of a women's group in solidarity with each other. So we're going to do it as a round, and George and Laura are going to, George is going to play it through, I think, so you hear what it sounds like. But we want you to come up here so the Zoom people can hear how it sounds as well. So I think we're going to stay seated so you can all see the words while we're singing it. So enjoy.
So can we all sing it through once? Right? And then we'll do the round? Okay.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
We'll start off on this side, and as soon as the first line is done, Lauren will read you from the beginning.
Yeah, so you
Okay.
wait and come in after them with me.
Building bridges between our divisions, I reach out to you, will you reach out to me? With all of our voices and all of our visions,
With all of our voices and all of our visions, friends, we could make such sweet harmony.
Now, it's time to together share and express our very unique covenant, the promise to keep us together as a community. To help me, Jerome is going to read in English and Sebastian in Spanish. Please stand if you're willing and able. I'm sorry.
We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others. This is our covenant.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
What I cherish most about Unitarian Universalist faith is how participatory this faith is. For example, the member congregations in the last decade participated in an open and democratic process to update our bylaws, which ultimately stated that all of our principles, values, everything bubble up to one thing, that we seek to center our faith and our lives in love. So the ritual to me of sharing our joys and our concerns and sorrows in community is a testimonial, frankly, of love in action. We do this publicly so we can celebrate the joys, hold the concerns in our hearts, and show empathy for the sorrow for other people in the room and others in the world. And it's just such a beautiful ritual. You have a tradition here of lighting your first candle for the hospitality of the Mexican people that have welcomed so many of us to San Miguel and to Mexico with much gratitude and hospitality. The second candle is the peace candle, reminder that many people in the world are living in war zones or under threat, and reminder that we need to all live in peace and love with compassion and justice. And then there were several joys and concerns submitted this week. We want to light a candle in memory of Roland Salazar Rose, or I think that's how it's pronounced, who passed away this week at the age of 99. He was the ex-husband of Helen Rivas Rose, who had lived in San Miguel for many years and used to attend our fellowship. We also want to light a candle of concern for attacks on the trans community, including loss of rights and medical care, and a statement really that we stand in solidarity always with them in their struggle. And kind of related to that, a candle of great concern for the attacks that happened yesterday at the Berlin Pride Parade, which resulted in at least one death and many injured. There's a few more that came in this morning on cards. Marjorie would like us to hold Tom, a dear friend, in our thoughts. He's recovering from a rare blood cancer. And then Kathy Zapata and Alec Bergamini are very happy to be back in San Miguel de Allende. They're here, maybe on Zoom. And was there anything on the chat? No. Okay. So please light one last candle. She's laughing because I always forget this part. Lighting one last candle for the joys and concerns that we're holding in our hearts but weren't stated publicly. And now a beautiful part of this ritual is I invite you to come up and be able to light your own candle with our help. If you want me or Carla to come out and light one out there because you don't want to come forward, please make your presence known and let us begin. My reading today comes from Valerie Kaur, that's how the last name is pronounced, and it's titled Wonder. Now, Valerie Kaur is a daughter of a Punjab Sikh farmer in California. She's a civil rights leader, a lawyer, an award-winning filmmaker, educator, and founder of the Revolutionary Love Project. Valerie became an activist when a Sikh farmer and family friend was the first person murdered in hate violence in the aftermath of the 9/11 attacks. For 2 decades, in his memory, Valerie has led visionary campaigns to tell untold stories and change policy on issues ranging from hate crimes to digital freedom. Now, in the reading, Cora uses the word wonder, it's even the title, but in the context she's using it, to me, it's a very similar meaning to curiosity, which has been my theme this month, awakening curiosity. So here's her reading. To wonder is to cultivate a sense of awe and openness to others' thoughts and experiences, their pain and their wants and needs. It is to look upon the face of anyone and anything and say, "You are a part of me I do not yet know." Wonder is an orientation to humility, recognizing that others are as complex and infinite to themselves as we are to ourselves. Wondering about a person gives us information about how to love them. And you can practice wonder for all other things too, animals, trees, living beings, and the earth. Wonder gives you information on how to care for them. Wonder is the wellspring of love. So my last message for the month under Awakening Curiosity is probably the most serious one I've given to you. It's called Curiosity and Judgment. So it's closely tied, and I'd like you to reflect on one of our Unitarian Universalist shared principles, pluralism. In the pluralism statement that we all agreed to hold up as one of our shared values, it says this: we celebrate that we are all sacred beings, diverse in culture, experience, and theology. We covenant to learn from one another in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. We embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. It's a beautiful statement. It's also a very difficult statement. Because the greater the differences between two people, of course, the harder it is to live fully into that value. It's relatively easy to embrace differences when the differences are small, or maybe they're just interesting, or even enriching. It's much harder when the differences strike at our fears and our identities, our politics, our wounds, or even our sense of morality. So last week, if you were here or watched it on Zoom, I reflected on curiosity as just a spiritual practice. And I suggested that curiosity is not just this intellectual interest, it's a discipline of openness. Real curiosity requires humility. It requires vulnerability. Real curiosity means we must remain open to answers we do not expect and perspectives we may not like. And that can be very, very, very unsettling. So in the reading, it came from a book called See No Stranger. Valerie Kaur uses a different word for this spiritual posture. She calls it wonder. And she says, "You are a part of me I do not know yet." I think that's amazing. What a profound spiritual challenge. Kaur says, wonder is the wellspring of love. So if wonder, or curiosity, is the wellspring of love, then curiosity is not optional for those of us who want to live love-centered lives. Like water from a spring, curiosity just keeps flowing. Without curiosity, love stagnates. Without curiosity, assumptions harden into judgments. And without curiosity, other people become these caricatures instead of human beings. And so our calling here, I believe, is not merely to love in theory. I think all of you can sit there today and go, yes, love's good. We want to center our lives in love, and it's all theoretical until we have to do something about it. Our calling is to do the spiritual work necessary to allow love to flow freely, to remove the obstacles that block it. And one of those greatest obstacles, in my opinion, and I am so guilty of this, is judgment. So today I want to think about 3 levels of difficult encounters where curiosity and judgment collide. So I thought about this and I lumped it into 3 titles, my working titles. The first is the inner circle. The second, it's concentric circles. The next one's the stranger. And then you get out there in the third one, I called it the antagonist. So here we go. The inner circle. It's the easiest place to practice pluralism, frankly. Consider this congregation. Most of us probably share certain broad values. We likely have overlapping educational experiences or political leanings or even social concerns. And even when we differ, we often differ within a framework of mutual respect. And this congregation already practices curiosity well. If you think about it, you invite people with different spiritual journeys into this pulpit. Look at me this whole month, right? You explore different traditions. You ask questions, and you listen. And yet, even within Unitarian Universalism, there have always been tensions and dichotomies. There's always been the rational thinker versus the emotional thinker. Or another way that's often referred to as the people that use the head versus the heart. This one I love, the metaphorical versus the literal. I used to be the literal and I moved into the metaphorical. The scientific and the mystical. The theist and the non-theist, which is a fancy way of saying God or not God, right? Some hear religious language poetically, others hear it spiritually. Some reject supernaturalism completely, others experience mystery deeply and personally. And somehow, imperfectly, but sincerely, we try to remain in covenant with one another. I have to give you kind of a light example from one of my congregations recently. UFOs, or as they're now often called, UAPs, which is unidentified aerial phenomenon. Now, this discussion suddenly erupted in my congregation because of the recent Steven Spielberg movie Discovery Day. And if you don't know anything about it, it's the day that the whole world discovers all at once that there's life outside Earth. So that kind of puts it in frame, right? Well, in recent years, we know the government agencies have released files and testimony that reignited public fascination about the possibility of extraterrestrial life. Now imagine a small group discussion here at your fellowship. One person is convinced intelligent life exists elsewhere in the universe. Another thinks all UFO reports are explainable through psychology or atmospheric science. Another wonders about spiritual implications. Another is simply curious about the mystery. So a judgmental conversation would probably sound like this on both sides. How can anyone believe in that nonsense? Or, how can people be so closed-minded? But a curious conversation sounds different. It would be, well, what experiences led you to think that way? Or what meaning does this hold for you? Or what do you think humanity longs for in all of these stories? What's the underlying purpose? Curiosity doesn't demand agreement. Curiosity asks us to seek understanding. And in communities like this one, that kind of openness allows pluralism to thrive. Okay, that was the easy one. Let's move on to the stranger. This one's a little bit harder because strangers are often interpreted through first impressions. We see someone for 10 seconds and our minds instantly construct a story. Some of you have heard me tell you that when I'm in coffee shops I always go to the counter that's sitting in front of the window and I watch people on the sidewalk and I entertain myself by making up stories about them. No, I don't believe any of them are true, but I just entertain myself. But you get the idea, right? Well, writer and artist Jen Pichichi tells a story in her essay, When You Want to Judge, Be Curious Instead. She describes an encounter with someone whose behavior irritated her, involving a mother and her children at a library story hour. Instead of participating with her children, which probably was the expectation, she was sitting over in the corner on her phone. And immediately, Jen's mind began forming harsh judgments about that person's character and motives. But then she stopped herself. Instead of assuming the worst, she became curious. She thought, well, maybe they're just overwhelmed. Or maybe they just received some terrible news and you need to pay attention to it. Maybe they're just exhausted. Maybe they're carrying burdens that are invisible to her. And she realized then something very important. Judging the person had left her angry, irritated, and self-righteous. But curiosity opened up another possibility: compassion. She writes that there's something freeing about giving somebody the benefit of the doubt and imagining possibilities beyond assumptions. And she concluded with a powerful reminder to all of us: judgments are assumptions, not truths. That line matters because judgments often feel very true, but often they're stories we invent from incomplete information. And curiosity then interrupts these stories. Here are more common examples that Pichichi also offers. Think about this. You've been involved, I'm sure, in at least one of these. And think about what you did at that moment. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A cashier seems very unfriendly. A neighbor appears rude. Our first instinct is often a moral interpretation. They're selfish. They're inconsiderate. They're just plain rude. But curiosity asks, what might I not know? Again, curiosity doesn't mean tolerating abuse or pretending harmful behavior is acceptable. It simply means resisting the temptation to collapse another human being into a single negative interpretation. All right, are you ready? I'm moving to the antagonist now. The hardest category of all. I struggle with it. These are not strangers we just simply pass by briefly. These are people we encounter repeatedly who evoke frustration, anger, fear, or maybe even pain. Family members, neighbors, coworkers, maybe people in civic groups that you belong to, people at school board meetings, for example. The one I hear most about is holiday dinners, particularly Thanksgiving dinner. That uncle so-and-so who's so crotchety, right? These are the people who make us think, how on earth can they believe that? How can they be so misinformed, so narrow-minded, so selfish, so hateful? And to be fair, sometimes the beliefs or behaviors involved truly are harmful. So let us make an important distinction. Understanding is not the same as excusing. Explaining is not the same thing as endorsing. Curiosity does not require surrendering your moral convictions, and it doesn't require reconciliation. It does not require placing yourself in unsafe situations either. And it's also important to acknowledge something else. Curiosity itself can be a privilege. Think about it. To remain open and vulnerable often means you are not overwhelmed by fear every moment of your life. Fear narrows people. Fear hardens people. Fear pushes people towards certainty and defensiveness. And many antagonistic attitudes are rooted at least partially in fear. And I found this list kind of very profound. Fear of change, fear of displacement, fear of losing status, fear of cultural unfamiliarity. I bet a lot of you can relate to that one. Fear of economic insecurity, fear of the unknown. Think about it for a second. Those of you from the US, these prominent examples of fear right now in the public. Immigration is the one that seems to be talked about the most. Many people hear about immigrants from Latin America and Mexico and react with fear in our culture. Now, some fears are often manipulated politically. Some are based on misinformation. Some become prejudice or xenophobia. And yet underneath those reactions may also be anxieties about economic survival, social change, or cultural disorientation. Another one that seems to be coming up, and it was brought up in our Joys and Concerns today, is transgender people. Some thank heaven in my congregations react with compassion and fear, but others seem to react with confusion, fear, or hostility. But I'm reminded that even in my small little congregations in small towns where they rarely encounter transgender people, and they're confused completely between gender fluidity and sex and all the definitions, they will still share their pronouns because they know it's the loving thing to do. Again, curiosity does not mean accepting harmful rhetoric or abandoning vulnerable people. Curiosity, though, may ask, what fears are underneath this reaction? What experiences shaped this person? What stories have they been told? Maybe what pain are they protecting? And sometimes when we listen deeply enough, we discover that beneath anger is grief. Beneath certainty is a lot of fear. And beneath hostility is confusion. And sometimes we don't even discover that. Sometimes, I will admit, people remain rigid, defensive, or even cruel. That just is who they are. Curiosity is not magic. You may never agree with the antagonist. You may never change them. But perhaps the goal is not conversion. Perhaps the goal here is remembering their humanity. And perhaps, in choosing curiosity instead of contempt, we offer something increasingly rare in this world today: humility, vulnerability, presence, and care. We live in a culture that rewards outrage and certainty. Social media trains us to basically flatten people into categories. And politics trains us to see enemies instead of neighbors. And we all know the news media profits from conflict. But our faith calls us elsewhere. Our faith asks us to wonder, to look upon the face of anyone or anything and say, "You are a part of me I do not know yet." That does not mean abandoning justice. It means grounding justice in love rather than dehumanization. Because once we stop wondering about one another, love begins to dry up. But even a small movement towards curiosity can reopen the wellspring. A thoughtful question, a pause before judgment, a willingness to listen, and a moment of humility. Sometimes that small adjustment changes everything. it softens another person. It softens us. And sometimes it simply keeps our hearts from hardening. And perhaps that is where pluralism truly begins. Not merely tolerating differences, not merely coexisting, but choosing again and again to meet one another with curiosity instead of contempt, to seek understanding before judgment, to protect the flow of love. That's the pluralism we are called to encourage, and that is the blessing of curiosity as a spiritual practice. Amen. Thank you. I picked a hymn today that's one of my favorites because it's got this kind of gospel swing to it. I'm not sure how familiar you are with it. In the small hymnal, it's 1026, but it's called If Every Woman in the World. Lauren's going to come up and lead you in it. There are a lot of words in the verses on the screen, so I suggest you stay seated again so everybody can see the words as we're singing. So you ready to go?
Yeah.
All right.
If every woman in the world had her mind set on freedom, if every woman in the world dreamed a sweet dream of peace, if every woman of every nation, young and old, each generation, held her hands out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every man had his mind set on freedom, if every brother stood with brother as a dream of peace, every man of every nation, young and old, each generation, held his hand out in the name of love, there would be no more war. If every leader in the world shared a vision of freedom, if every leader in the world shared a sweet dream of peace, if every leader of every nation worked for justice and liberation, because in the name of love there would be got different words.
Thank you. Our time for generosity is a moment to reflect that curiosity could be a formal space or informal, but the main thing that it shares is that curiosity helps us to share the opportunities that we gave to the kids to be kids, and the adults having a safe space to make questions and to be here. As community, to make this possible, we not just need time, we need volunteers, staff with specific skills, but also the economical possibility to sustain all this, to build the fellowship with the safe requirements for all. With that, today we're not just reflecting creativity and the tools to make it happen. Positive. Also, we thank for your generosity towards to keep it working and strengthen our fellowship in our learning for all the members. Now, the offering is going to be gratefully received.
De ti yo recibo, a ti te doy, así compartimos y vivimos hoy. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live. De ti yo recibo, a ti te doy, así compartimos y vivimos hoy. From you I receive, to you I give, together we share, and from this we live.
Today I'd like to extinguish the chalice again with the words from Valerie Kaur, Choose to Wonder. When we choose to wonder about people we don't know, when we imagine their lives and listen for their stories, we begin to expand the circle of those we see as a part of us. We prepare ourselves to love beyond what evolution requires. Amen. And as a treat today, a postlude. This time it's not musical, even though it said we were going to have music. Marjorie's coming up, and she's going to share with us a character that knew all about curiosity before I even thought about this sermon.
Thank you so much. So I was so excited about this topic of curiosity, and I asked Reverend Jim if I could say a few words, and he was curious enough to let me do it. So first of all, the word curious is a curious word. It means two things in a way, right? To be curious, interested in investigating something, and it also means something is curious, odd, strange, different. And so taking both of those, how do we become curious, interested in those things which are different, not what we normally think of? My first thought was Alice in Wonderland. There you go. Is it up there? Yeah. Okay, so the very title has curiouser and curiouser up there on it. And it's a word that Lewis Carroll invented. It's actually not a real word. It's more curious. He invented it for the story. So just a quick recap for those of you who don't remember. Alice is sitting and having a picnic with her little sister, and suddenly a white rabbit runs by with a stopwatch going, I'm late, I'm late, I'm late. And rather than think, oh, how odd and strange, maybe I should shoot it, she runs after it. And it says actually in the book that she'd never seen a rabbit with a waistcoat pocket or a watch, and burning with curiosity, she ran across the field after it and just in time to pop down a large rabbit hole, never once considering how in the world she was going to get out again. And then she goes through various adventures. She tries pills and potions that make her small or big. She finds a little bottle on it that says, "Drink me." The bottle wasn't marked poison, so Alice ventured to taste it, and finding it very nice, she soon finished it off. What a curious feeling, said Alice. I must be shutting up like a telescope. Then she encounters all sorts of queer characters, a smiling cat, a dormouse, a mad hatter, a caterpillar, and she never once becomes adversarial with them. She remains curious. And soon her eyes fell on a little glass box, and in it was a very small cake that said, "Eat me." Well, I'll eat it, said Alice, and if it makes me grow larger, I can reach the key, and if it makes me grow smaller, I'll creep under the door. So either way, I'll get into the garden, and I don't care what happens. So she set out, finished off the cake. Curiouser and curiouser, cried Alice. She was so surprised, for the moment, she quite forgot how to speak good English and looked like a large telescope. At the end, she's awakened by her sister, says, wake up, Alice. What a long sleep you had. And Alice said, once again, I've had such a curious dream. She doesn't say it was horrible. She doesn't say it was a nightmare. She found it very curious, and off they go. So, even though Alice is young, you may think, well, is that something only the young are capable of? And I think not. No invention, no new idea comes about without someone being curious. How do we bring light to the world? How do we have internet? Those are all things that started with curiosity. Many years ago, I had the great good fortune of meeting Gene Roddenberry, the brilliant creator of the original Star Trek. And I asked him if he thought we'd get to other planets. It's so interesting that Jim talked about Discovery Day. If we'd ever get there or meet our galactical neighbors. And he said, we have the technology now, but we don't have the emotional intelligence. Meaning if we met someone from another planet and they said, hi, I'm from Alpha Centauri, what would we do? Would we say, tell me more? Or would we shoot them or lock them up as they do in Discovery Day, right? And he was very disturbed because the whole purpose of Star Trek was they went places where no man had gone before to discover new life, to be curious about it. And then it certainly devolved into our lower selves where they became combative with each other. But he didn't want them to fight or hate, but to be curious. So how much different would the world look if we were curious about people different than us rather than antagonistic? So I encourage you all to be curious, especially about strange or peculiar or curious people or ideas. Perhaps if we find something or someone queer in the old sense of the word, we might get curious about them rather than judgmental. Tell me more, one might say. Let's all become curious about those things that are curious. Let's awaken our own curiosity. It doesn't always kill the cat. Who knows what we'll find if we dare to go down a rabbit hole? Imagine that.